Hello, I'm Athena,
And I'm Michael.
and we're here today to talk to you about visual essays, the kind of essay that you can integrate into your teaching practice.
All right, and to get started, we have a couple learning objectives. So this workshop aims to answer the following questions, which are what is a visual essay? How can I integrate visual essays into my practice? And what are the most effective activities, scaffolds, and technique for this mode of writing?
So, to present to you an outline of how this workshop's going to go, first we're going to be defining our terms, talking about what is a visual essay, what constitutes this mode of writing. Then we're going to talk about visual analysis and how it differs from that conventional sort of writing. We're going to talk about structuring, what you need to make a visual essay. We're going to talk about how to grade this, how to assess this kind of writing, and then we're going to have some closing thoughts.
So moving on to what is a visual essay. A visual essay is a multimodal composition that blends images, text, video, and or sound to bring an argument or tell a story. We have plenty of samples later on into this, but in a way, you have a script and you have different images that tie along with that script, and you try and force an argument or an emotion, as most writing do, out of your audience. Traditional essays typically use language, and visual essays actually use design, placement, and organization to create this meaning. So the language of a visual essay is the way how you organize and edit and put together your argument. So they can be found in journalism, digital storytelling, marketing, and education, as well as websites and many other types of media.
So, visual essays are very important in the English classroom. A lot of modern day English classrooms rely on a single form of communication, which is linguistic. We talk, we write, we discuss writing, we analyze writing. It's a lot of words on paper. So, a study from the University of California found that the average person processes 34 gigabytes of information every day. And to put that in perspective, the average Stranger Things episode is about 1 gigabyte. So, that is about 34 Stranger Things episodes per day. And then a large percentage of that information is actually being communicated to us through a visual medium. We see posters that are promoting local events. We see trailers for movies and TV shows. We see ads taped and projected across the walls. We see art. We see graffiti. We see all of these things that are visual mediums that are communicating information to us without any words at all. In order to prepare students to scrutinize, engage with, and respond to these visual communications, they have to learn how these kinds of messages are constructed. What are they made of? And in this workshop, we will discuss a potential avenue for this sort of process, which is the visual essay assignment. So, in terms of real world applications, visual essays are actually very relevant outside of the classroom. So, journalists are using visual essays to do investigative storytelling. Scientists and researchers are making infographics and visual abstracts. Activists are using these things to bring attention to social issues. Influencers are using visual essays to promote personal brands. Educators use visual essays to meet the needs of visual learners.
We are going to move on to our workshop structure where we expect a bit more interaction between you guys and as well as opportunities for you to practice the things that we expect for you to be teaching. So we're first going to go into the different concepts, so understanding key elements of a visual essay, which will be in a handout coming up. We will then model analyzing a sample visual essay together, where we will offer you a chance to watch a visual essay and then also analyze it with you. And then we'll also apply it where we can practice the analysis within a visual essay of your own choice.
So, a visual essay is actually made up of a couple of different things working together. So, we have image and text being integrated together, working together to reinforce a sort of argument that is traditionally only made with text. We have pacing and structure. So, how can sequencing, transitions, and timing direct audience engagement in the case of a video? We have tone and mood, which is how color, contrast, imagery, and other design choices can create a sort of emotional impact within the viewer. And then we have accessibility, which is how design choices can affect readability and comprehension. And all of these things come together to create the visual essays that you will be looking at today.
So now that we have gone over the different aspects of a visual essay, we're going to go over the difference between visual essays and traditional essays. So they differ in many different ways, one of which is the mode of communication. So for a traditional essay, you're more expecting the written part of it. So it's usually text only. Rarely do you get image. Maybe when you're doing a movie, you may get images, but most often you get traditional essays as text only. For visual essays, you are typically only using images and video, and then you utilize the text to kind of amplify the images and videos. So the structure is also a bit different. But within a traditional essay, you typically expect a linear structure. You get your introduction, your body, and your conclusion. Now, nonlinear is what you expect from a visual essay because you have images pacing back and forth. You may have things that happen later appear before things that happen sooner. We also experienced that within our sample visual essay. There are also different forms of engagement when it comes to written and visual essays. So, in written, you typically use different written rhetoric. You have your similes and your alliteration. You have different ways to engage the reader. But with visual essays, you typically use striking images, and also sometimes you'll edit visual essays in a way that helps tell the story in a different way. Then finally, you have your audience considerations. For traditional essays, you typically design it for reading comprehension. But for visual essays, there's a whole new dimension to it where you have to focus on the multimodal element. You have to understand how to analyze images, and you have to be informed on all of this analysis. So now we're going to move on to a little 15-minute activity. Um, if you're alone, you can still run through some of these questions and these steps within yourself. Maybe you write them down and reflect on them. But for now, we're going to do this like quote unquote think, pair, share activity within our own devices. So first, take a moment to think about how you currently use visual materials and instruction. Do you use them in PowerPoints? Do you hate PowerPoints and decide not to use them? Do you show videos in class? Do you watch movies? These are all different visual materials, and take a moment to respond to some of these questions. Do you use images, infographics, videos, or presentations? If no, why? If yes, what are challenges that you face when getting the message across from students? And how do different students respond to visual materials? Go ahead and take a moment to answer that. If you're alone, you can go ahead and start reflecting on these questions. Um, Discuss them, maybe go more in depth, and maybe start thinking about, okay, if I want to teach visual essays, how might I need to adjust my curriculum to engage students and teach how to analyze visual mediums? And once you have come up with those ways, start thinking about your current curriculum that you are teaching right now and find an idea or two about what you may utilize visually in that current curriculum. And then if you're with a partner, you can go ahead and discuss this with the partner.
So, we're going to take a moment to analyze a sample visual essay that was created for the purposes of this workshop. And as you are watching this visual essay, I want you to go through a couple of guided viewing questions just to consider while you're looking at it. So, I want you to think about what message is the creator conveying with this visual essay? What visual techniques does the creator use to make their argument interesting and engaging? How does the pacing and sequencing shape your understanding? And what role does color and text play in reinforcing that meaning? So we're going to take a look at this visual essay.
I will also declare a national energy emergency. We will drill, baby, drill.
So, looking at some of these questions, and after looking at that visual essay, I can definitely think that one of the messages the creator was conveying is sort of a pro Earth, sort of anti oil drilling message. And the visual techniques that they used to make that argument engaging, they showed a lot of video and they showed a lot of like really, really emotionally charged imagery, like that image of like that starving bear in the melted out Arctic. And then the pacing and the sequencing is very fast paced. It's very intense to sort of demonstrate like the urgency of the situation at hand. And then color and text play a big role in reinforcing meaning here because the text of the music in the background, it corresponds with the message of the visual essay. And it has this sort of intense red color to indicate that sense of urgency and intensity. So in order to create that visual essay, the creator of that visual essay had to first create a storyboard. Now, you might choose to adapt an assignment like this for your students. A storyboard sort of acts as like a blueprint for your visual essay. It helps students to organize their ideas and sort of look at what they are trying to say with their visual essay and what images, videos, what resources they will need in order to say that. And the blueprint should be used to direct the focus of their research. And the best practices, sort of, for engaging this in your teaching is to encourage students, instead of thinking in a more textual sense, to think visually. So, what image, what imagery best conveys my argument here? And you can get your students to use Canva, Google Docs, or even like printed templates and like physical collages in order to storyboard their ideas. Students should keep each section of their storyboard simple and direct with very limited text. You know, the images should speak for themselves, and you should treat the storyboard like a proof of concept that's very loose, very like changeable, rather than a strict outline that students must adhere to. So, in terms of creating a storyboard, it's usually best to follow these kinds of steps. So, first, obviously, the student has to choose a topic. So, they have to consider what is the argument, theme, or story? What am I trying to convey here? Then they have to consider structure. So, how will I organize this information? Then they might consider visuals. What kind of images, graphics, or footage will represent my ideas? And then they have to go into scripting. So, what will the key points of my visual essay be? And how can I bring research into it? So we have created a sample storyboard section just to correspond with that sample visual essay you saw earlier. As you can see, the creator has used a bunch of images to sort of demonstrate what kind of effect they would like. So it's going from like the happy polar bears in the snow to the sad polar bear in like the wasteland. We have like some nice trees and a beautiful forest, and then it goes to like the burning forest, and then we have this beautiful river, and then it goes to a body of water just full of trash. And they brought in some outside resource. So they brought in a quote and then they brought in a news article. So all of this sort of demonstrates a lot of research and thought and planning, which is really important when creating something like this that is purely visual.
All right. And once you have your storyboard and your ideas for imaging, you then have to go on to script writing. Although the visual essay does not focus so much more on text, it still helps amplify the meaning of visual essays. Like in our previous visual essay sample, we had quotes and also a song playing with lyrics that tie to what the creator was conveying. This is important to note whenever you are creating a visual essay and also when you're planning on teaching it. So, visual essay requires concise, engaging scripts that integrate research and storytelling. So, unlike the word count that we have for essays, the written part of visual essays should be a lot more concise and should not be the main draw of it. So, For example, here's a quote. When we talk about rising sea levels, we usually think of coastal cities. But what about communities inland? Scientists predict that by 2050, millions will be displaced due to environmental change, not just on the coast, but in rural towns too. This is a striking quote and one that could be used. This could be the only written text that you have in your visual essay, and it would work effectively. So you have to choose for your script writing effective quotes. So moving on for tips is be brief. Viewers will not focus on your visuals if your script is too complicated. Voiceovers and captions work best with short, precise sentences. Once again, the visual should be the draw of your essay, not the written text, which is what makes visual essays so different than traditional essays. So you need to blend research and narrative, present evidence while keeping the tone engaging, utilize your own voice while sticking to the facts. Within the sample visual essay, we had a way of organizing it in a way where it had a narrative. We talked about the quote of our current president, then we moved into a song about wanting to defend the land, and finally concluding it with an old Native American proverb. And then also you need to use transitions. Notice that the quotes that were used in the visual essay were different. Notice that the quotes that were used in the visual essay differed in a way that they stood on their own. They transitioned into each other. They didn't awkwardly stand alone. And finally, don't rely on the script. The thing that I keep hammering home is not about the text. Your visual essay should be about the visuals, not about the text. A script can support your visuals, but the visuals must stand on their own. Otherwise, it's just an essay with pictures in it. And that's kind of what you're avoiding with this visual essay.
So, once you've gotten that sort of planning aspect and the script writing all down pat, you are going to need to give students some sort of tool to create their visual essay, which is where editing softwares come in. Now, you may choose to use a different software from the ones listed. However, we have gotten a couple of softwares together that we feel are best suited for this purpose. One thing that these softwares have in common is that they are all free to use. Some of them have features that are locked behind premium memberships, but most of the basic features that students are going to need to create their visual essay are going to be free. So one of them we have here is CapCut. CapCut is very beginner friendly. It has the ability to trim and crop footage. You can change aspect ratio. You can implement green screen features. You can edit the speed and the tempo of a video, and it has built-in filters and transitions so that students who want to get sort of experimental and artistic with their projects do have the freedom to do so. CapCut is actually affiliated with the app TikTok, so it is already very popular for students to use for their own personal projects. Some of your students may already be familiar with it, so it's a very, very great option. And another app that we have mentioned here, we have WeVideo and Adobe Premiere Rush, which are both very good for students. And then we have DaVinci Resolve. DaVinci Resolve is a bit of a black sheep here because it is very difficult to use. It has a lot of features which can be very intimidating for a new user. You can make and manipulate 3D models in it. You have an in-depth audio system. You have a built-in closed captioning system. So it's very difficult to learn, but if you were willing to take the time and sort of explore this app and maybe consider bringing it into your practice, you could get some really advanced, really interesting projects out of it. And as for programs, once you've chosen whatever program best suits your purpose, you might consider creating a guide for your students. The guide should show them how to access all the basic features of the app. It should model sort of an editing process that they can emulate, and it should include tips for troubleshooting, what to do if something doesn't work or if they don't know how to access a feature. You will obviously have to teach these things directly as well, but the guide just allows students to re-access this information later on if they ever forget. So if you're unsure of how to move on from here, we do have a sample guide for the app CapCut that we have created, and then along with that, we have also made a sort of mini guide on how to use CapCut that you may choose to adapt for your own students.
Hello, this is Athena, and welcome to the editing tutorial portion of the workshop. As you can see, I've got CapCut open on my display here, and then the first step when you're wanting to create a project in CapCut is to go here and click the button Create Project, and that will open the app. And then, as you can see here, there's a lot of interface, there's a lot of buttons, there's a lot of menus. This is all kind of overwhelming to a beginner. But I'm going to show you just sort of the base features that any student is going to need in order to be successful and to create a beautiful visual essay within this app. So you're going to need some elements first. So this media tab is going to be where you want to find your elements. So you're going to want to hit import media first, and then you see it says drag and drop videos, photos, and audio files here. So I can put in individual images, but I am just going to, I've set aside a folder of images I would like to use for my project. So I'm just going to take it from my file explorer, I drag it, and then I set it down, I just let it go. And then the folder's right there, and I can click on it, and I can look, and I can view all of the pictures that I've saved to this folder. So I just have access to all those files. And then in order to get it into the project itself, what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to just click onto the image and then bring it down here into this middle area, which is where most of the editing stuff is going to happen. So once I have my image here, there's a couple of different things I need to note. So first of all, since this is a video project, I am creating a video. So in order to see, I'm going to put another dog in here, right there. And then in order to see how the video will appear in the project, I just press this big play button right here. And this line represents where we're at in the project. And it will just play the video from start to finish. And it's kind of boring looking right now, but we can fix that. So you can grab onto this line, which dictates what moment in the project you are at, and you can use it to move around. But you can also, if you have a lot going on, what you can do is there's this bar down here that you can use to sort of navigate your own project easily. And if you want to zoom in or out of it, if you want to see it smaller, you press this magnifying bar, you pull it down to zoom out a little bit so I can see more of it. If it's like a 40-minute project, you're going to want it on like the lowest magnification. But if it's like a 10-second project, I could have it pretty high up just because there's not a lot to move around in. So now that you've got your images in here, I'm also going to show you another very essential feature if you're going to be editing videos, which is the split feature. So if I have this and I want to make it shorter, there's two ways I can do that. This moment in time, maybe I'm like, I don't want this dog to be there for 5 whole seconds. So I can grab the side of it and squish it. And that does exactly what you would think it does. It just makes it so that it's there for less time. And then it's like, there, it's only there for 2 seconds, and then it cuts to the next thing. Or if I want a very precise, very specific moment where I want it to switch from this dog to that dog, I can split it. So how I would do that is I would put the line where I want to split. So let's say I just want to put it right here between these two dogs and this dog. And then I click this button right here, just split. And as you can see, I have just turned it into 2 separate clips. So I can take this and I can move it to a different point in the project if I would like. Or if I click on it and hit the delete key on my keyboard, boom, gone. So those are the 2 ways. And if you're working with videos, obviously timing is going to be affected by this. So you're going to want to be kind of careful of what you split and what you delete. And if you want to bring it back, it's back. It's right here. It's hidden away. So you can also delete them, not just using the delete key, but using this trash can button right here. Just click on it, gone. And any element can be split. So that includes audio files, that includes videos, that includes text files, stickers. So every element is going to manifest onto here in the same way. And you can layer images by stacking them on top of each other so that I can have it cut from this on top of this. What I can do is I can mess with the scale to make it bigger or smaller. And I can click on it and drag it to sort of move it around so that this dog is in this clip. He just appears in there. So I can use that to sort of play with how things appear on the page. And this can create some unwanted overlap, obviously, because you have all this white, it kind of looks unclean, unprofessional. So what I am going to do is I am going to mask this image. And how I'm going to do that, CapCut has a couple of ways of doing that, actually. So you see here, remove background, ignore this. So remove background here. This is how we're going to get rid of that white space back here. So auto removal is a premium feature. It's very nice. As you can see, it just took out the whole background, but obviously you cannot use that unless you have a premium subscription. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do the custom removal here. I'm going to click that, and then it gives me access to 2 free tools. These cost money, so I'm not going to use them, but these 2 are the brush and the eraser. So the brush is what we're going to be using to actually like show what part of the image we want to remain intact. So if I brush this area and then let go, apply, now this is all that's left. It's just this white space that I have highlighted. So I'm going to hit undo right here to undo that. There we go. And then I'm going to use the brush to very carefully, will erase whatever you have just highlighted so that you can start over or potentially clean up any loose edges. So we're going to take the brush here and we're going to, oh, that's the eraser. Whoopsie daisy. We're going to take the brush and we're just going to sort of broad strokes highlight the dog, and we're not going to worry about whether the edges are messy or not because we're just going to clean that up later. Just slowly, carefully sort of highlighting them. There we go. And then I'm going to click the eraser, and obviously since I'm doing this on a mouse, this is not going to be perfect. If you want a more precise sort of edge, I would recommend just going and finding a PNG image, which usually doesn't have this background. So what you can do is you can search sort of like if I wanted to find a dog, but I wanted like no background on it, I would look up dog PNG transparent no background, just those keywords right after whatever I wanted to see. And usually the images that come up will be a little bit less white background. And then I'm going to highlight any parts that I messed up on, just to sort of make sure I've kept the shape of the dog mostly intact. And like I said, this does not have to be perfect. Okay, I think I've done sort of the best that I could do here. So I am going to hit apply. And would you look at that, now he can exist without covering up all the other dogs. He's just sitting there hanging out. And he's beautifully masked. So I've done a wonderful job getting rid of the background of this image. So this is how you can sort of have images overlay each other if you ever need to do that. It's very clean, very professional, much better than just having just a blank white, just real choppy, just maintaining the background. So I'm gonna delete that. And then, so alongside images and videos, there's a lot of other different things that you can put in your project. The audio tab right here, it lets you implement audio, so you can hit this import button and you can put a video in it. And I'm going to put this, and you can see it has extracted the audio. And then I just click it, I drag it, and I can drop it right here. And it doesn't matter where it is, because it's an audio file, it's not visible, it's not going to overlay over your items. So you can see now I've got some cute background music, and you can see just like the image files, if I scale it down a bit, I can grab the edge and just, nope, I can squish it like this so that it is no longer a different length than I actually want the video to be. So now I've got perfectly timed, but if I just want like this specific segment of the song, I can split it. So I click on it, I put the line right where I want it, and then I click split, and then I click over here, put the line where I want it, and I put split, and then I can just delete these two, and it'll stay where it is, and it's just that specific part of the song that I would like. And if I decide, oh, I want the first 2 seconds of this clip too, I can just stretch it out, and it will give me the 2 seconds that occurred before this. So that's how we can implement audio. And then with text, we can implement text like this. So you just click add text, and then I'm going to add default text. And if I just click it, it's going to appear on top of all my things by default. And it does default to like white Arial font text. So I'm going to do some modifications. So I'm going to just type woof. And then I am going to make the font something different, make it something cuter. Let's do, and then some of these cost money. You obviously don't want to use those, I'm gonna do Gothic. Oh, that's cute. And then you can make the font bigger or smaller, depending on your needs. I'm gonna make it enormous. And then I can bold. I'm having a hard time with the scroll. I have a bold. I can italicize it. I can change if it's uppercase or lowercase, which did change the font on me. Would not recommend that. I'm gonna switch it back to Gothic. Where is she? There she is. And then we have the color, so I'm gonna switch that just to black, just so it stands out against the background. And I can change the alignment, left, middle, right. If you would like vertical text for whatever reason, CapCut has that option for you. And then there's a couple other options. I can make the text, give it background, outline sort of thing. I can change the color. This would be great for captions if you want it to stand out against the background, where it's like, ooh, it's glowing. I think I like that. Let's get serious. So most of these other features are paid, and we don't have to worry about them. If I want to change the color of this glow, I can, so I can make it like blue. That's beautiful. And then change the intensity. So you can just sort of experiment with effects if you want to make something really visually interesting. And then just to move it around on the screen, I just click it and I move it about. I'm going to put it right up here. I think this is good. And then, like everything else, if I want it to be shorter, I can just squish it like this. And if I want it to only occur on a certain time, I can line it up, click split, and then just get rid of that. And then we just have our text file exactly where we want it. We can also experiment with, I do believe, the thought bubbles right here. There we go. So it has a bunch of thought bubble presets that I can throw onto it if I would like to make something more reminiscent of like graphic design. There's outlines, there's this neon LED sign effect, there's text bubbles. So definitely just go in and experiment and see what you like. This is cute. This is adorable. Hang on. Oh yeah, that's where it's at. So just sort of going in, getting experimental, trying new things just to see sort of what you want to do, what you're interested in. And then there's also animations. Now this is a little bit advanced. I don't know if this would be appropriate for every single visual essay project, but if you would like to integrate animations into your project, a lot of these are paid, some of them aren't. So I'm going to click this one and I'm going to, so we have in animations and out animations. So in animations occur at the start of whatever image or video you apply it to. So like this in animation for fade in, you can see it starts out black and then it fades into existence. Or like the zoom in, you can see it starts out close up and then it zooms into existence. And then the out transitions, the animations, are the ones that occur at the end. So like, let me find a free one. The zoom out one occurs at the end of this one. So it's like this dog is going away, he's going home. And then you can line them up in really interesting ways. So if I wanted to do the zoom in, let me move this back to where it belongs. Oh, I've accidentally taken this. There we go. So I can sort of have it zoom out and then into this one. So it's just so you can experiment, you can make something really interesting and visually compelling. I would definitely try to go easy on the animations though, because if you do use too much of them, if you use them excessively, it may be more difficult to read and more difficult for viewers to sort of understand and just like a little bit overtuned, you know. You really don't want to lose readability when you're working with this medium. And then whenever I decide, okay, I've created a masterpiece, this is my life's work, I would like to save it to my computer. You would go up here, click this export button, and then the export button right here. Oh, it's gonna let me know that I am using a paid feature, so I am going to take that off, and you can take the animations off by clicking none. So now we're back to free. And then I head up here and I click export. And then it's going to give me some information so I can choose what folder I would like to save it to. If I want to save it to a different folder on my computer, it will show me and I can pick whatever I want, but I'm going to save it to this folder. And then I can check resolution. You always want to go with like the highest option there. Bitrate, don't worry about it. these things generally, MP4 is usually a better format than .mov because it's a little more versatile. You can use it more, and then keep the frame rate at whatever default setting it's at, 30 FPS. You really don't need anything crazier than that. And then audio, going to make sure we keep the audio. Oh, and then you can choose this if you just want to save the audio files. So if you mix together like a really cool song with CapCut or something like that, or you just want the sound from it and you don't want the images, you would click on this. Or if you wanted to save it as a GIF, you could click on this. And so after you're done, you want to press export here, and it will save to your desktop, and you can even share it on YouTube or TikTok just by clicking these buttons and signing into it. And then you configure the title. So it's really easy to sort of put something together in this app and then put it straight on the internet. Or you could have your students upload it to YouTube so they could watch each other's work. It's very easy, very effective, and just a really interesting editing tool for students to pick up.
Okay, moving on from the editing softwares, we're going to talk about an engagement activity which you can fill out yourself. So, in this engagement activity, it's going to serve as a rough outline for what you may create as your own visual essay. This is also easily adapted to students. So, if you want to use this as a sort of outline for your own students in your own curriculum, you may gladly do so. So, first, before we get started, what challenges might students face in the storyboarding process? Some ideas that have come up to me is they may be overwhelmed with how many different ideas they may have. They may see so many different images and not know how they correlate. They may want to start with picking images first, but not knowing what their essay is. Having a way to narrow down some topics, so maybe you focus it on social change, maybe you focus it on a movie, or maybe you focus it on a text adaptation. There are different ways for you to focus in your own syllabus and your own project to help students not get overwhelmed with it. And then how can we scaffold storyboarding for different learning levels? One way you can scaffold storyboarding is you can look at a regular storyboard for a TV show or a movie because those exist everywhere. You can find accessible storyboard samples for animated shows pretty much anywhere. And you can utilize those as a rough outline and view them as their own storyboard, and students can then model based off of that. So now we will go into the brainstorming doc where I'll give you a brief walkthrough of how to fill it out. All right, hello. Welcome to the brainstorming part of this audiovisual workshop. As you can see here, we have the sample up, and I'm going to walk through how to utilize it, and so you have time to fill up on your own. Feel free to go ahead and pause whenever I go through the different topics, so you can fill it out in your own time. So the first step of figuring out what you want to do for your visual essays is to come up with a topic. So for my themes, I threw these out: the impact of social media on mental health, climate change and everyday actions, and the role of AI in education. And I narrowed it down to those three and eventually chose climate change and everyday actions. Now, you can fill out the question, why did you choose this topic? For me, I chose this topic because I feel like there's a lot of visual evidence through this, and you can create a pretty good visual essay with that. So go ahead and pause here and fill it out how you like. All right, assuming you filled it out, let's move on to number two, defining your purpose and audience. So for mine, my purpose is to inform and persuade. So first, I want to inform my audience about climate change and what they need to do to prevent it, and also persuade them in figuring out what to do. Target audience is students and educators, but also you can see right here, I added environmentally conscious individuals. These are just examples up here. You can always add your own. And then what reaction do I want them to have? I want viewers to feel empowered to take small actions that contribute slowing climate change. Then my audience will be influenced by using engaging before and after images, statistics, and a short animated sequence. Go ahead and pause here and fill out your own answers for this based off the topic that you chose. Moving on to step 3. Now this is the fun part. This is where you start storyboarding and figuring out what scenes you'll use. So I have 4 scenes. One's an introduction, then everyday actions, then small changes, then conclusion. Then I wrote the text that will pop up on the specific evidence and what visuals and media I will use to actually engage the audience. Go ahead and stop here. So that way you can fill out your own. And keep in mind that you can use this table as a rough draft or rough cut. Okay, moving on to number 4, selecting and integrating visuals. So this is also now the even more fun part. So you've already storyboarded what visuals you want to use, but now we have to figure out how to select it. So my main images will be a time lapse of ice caps melting, factory pollution, and climate protests. This is an engaging visual and a shocking visual to help booster engagement. Some background visuals, different natural textures to contrast with industrial scenes, text overlays, so different statistics about waste reduction and CO2 emissions, and also energy conservation. And then for transition and effects, different fast cuts and slow fades. So make sure that your visuals align with your message and don't distract from it. Go ahead and pause and fill out here. Moving on, now that we have chosen our topics and our visuals, we want to write a script with it. So I would say about 1 to 2 sentences about your points, so that way you can actually start out. This is more of an outline for your script. So for my opening sentence, every choice we make impacts the planet, but small actions add up. Then I have my main argument there. Climate change is a global crisis, but individuals have the power to make a difference through simple, everyday changes, from reducing waste to conserving energy. Every step matters. And then supporting evidence. I have 2 to 3 key points here, and then my conclusion. What small steps will you take today for a better future? Your script should be complement, not repeat your visuals. So make sure that you're not just saying the same thing, but you're actually building upon. Go ahead and pause here and go and figure out what your opening sentences and different arguments will be. Finally, with editing, I will be using for this one, I will be using CapCut and also Canva. But these are just some examples. Um, there is going to be accessibility. I'm going to include closed captionings for all spoken content and ensure high contrast text for readability. Go ahead and pause here to revise what you may need. Finally, moving on to reflection and next steps. These questions are supposed to drive and help you move forward. So all of these steps will help you, and you can answer these questions in your own time. And other than that, that's how you utilize this brainstorming document. And it's a great start, not only for you as teachers, but also a great start for your students. And there will be an adapted version of this for students inside our workshop. Thank you. All right, now that we have filled out the engagement activity, we're going to then move on to our peer review. So if you have a peer with you and who's watching this with you, you can go ahead and follow this. This peer review handout is also adapted for students in our document that you can take a look at as well. So each group will exchange visual essay clips with another group and provide feedback using this checklist right here. Is the message clear? So does the video effectively communicate a clear argument or theme? When you're watching it, can you clearly tell what the author is trying to put across? Integration of text and visuals. Does the text enhance the meaning or is it overwhelming? Does the visual essay stand alone without the text, or does it completely rely on the text? Engagement and pacing. Is the pacing too fast, too slow, or just right? So when it comes to pacing, you have to focus on, do you feel like that you got to the point too quickly? Do you feel like there wasn't enough build-up? Do you feel like it was thrown in your face and you didn't feel like that worked as well? Or was it too slow? Do you feel like there was too much build-up? Do you feel like the essay never reached that point or just right, which, meets the middle? And then finally, overall impact. Does the visual essay make you feel? Does it make you think about what you've created? And also, does it incite any sort of change in your own behaviors? So when you're done with that, you will also discuss one strength and one area for improvement with the creators of the clip. So moving on to lesson plans. So the first lesson plans focus more on the analysis side of things. So this is something you'll start noticing several consistency with this workshop itself. This workshop itself can almost serve as a model to this lesson plan. So the first thing the students will see is they will silently view a visual essay, and it'll be a short video without narration and only a photo essay sequence. Students will then have kind of a do now or bell ringer to jot down their initial thoughts and some guiding questions of what emotions or messages do you take away from this, and what choices did the creator make to convey this meaning? And this will guide their reflections. After writing down their thoughts, students will share their interpretations. So then moving on to what we do as the direct instruction is we will introduce the concept of visual essays, defining key elements such as composition, color, framing, text image, interaction, and rhetorical appeals. This will serve as a way for students to understand the different aspects of analyzing visual means, because there are a lot of different aspects in analyzing visual than there is textual. Then, as a teacher, we'll model it through the sample visual essay that we showed at the beginning, and also demonstrate how to identify ethos, pathos, and logos within the visual essay. So we'll have a guided graphic organizer tied to this lesson plan with different elements of a visual essay. Then we'll move into the guided practice, where students will form pairs and analyze a different visual essay from a selection that we created, which can also be seen under our resources tab. Using their annotated worksheets, they will mark key elements such as text placement, visual composition, and rhetorical appeals, along with many of the other definitions that we have already explained. They'll respond to some questions such as what is the main argument of the essay, and how does the visual composition reinforce or weaken the message. And finally, for their independent work, they will transition to where they'll write a short structured response analyzing one of their assigned visual essays. So this could focus on many different things depending on what you want to teach. It could focus on a specific visual technique, maybe rhetorical appeal, or it could even focus on the impact that the video has had. This writing exercise ensures that students are translating their visual observations into coherent analytical arguments. And then when they finish that, we'll have a close where they'll be given an exit ticket to answer two questions, which are: what is one technique you noticed in today's visual essays that made the argument stronger? And how does this compare to traditional essay writing? And then moving on to the second lesson.
So, this next lesson plan focuses more on the actual creation of a visual essay, specifically the early steps of it, which is like organizing your thesis, performing research in order to find items to put on your storyboard, and then considering stylistic appeal of your visual essay. So, first of all,
Are we gonna have like an outtakes?
oh yeah, that would
For
be
real?
that's fucked. I'll definitely put something together.
Yeah, here we go. The learning plan.
Oh, here it is. Thank you. I hate these things. I hate this layout. So, first of all, this lesson plan already assumes that students have a thesis for their visual essay in mind. Maybe this precedes another lesson where they have decided on the thesis for their visual essay. So, the first thing they do is they'll fill out a graphic organizer, which we have attached, that asks them to outline a few rough arguments that support their thesis. Then they will make these arguments to a partner, and then the partner will give them feedback on whether it was convincing or not. And then after that, we get a little bit of direct instruction to teach important research processes. And these processes can be applied to other kinds of essays, but the instruction itself will focus on multimodal essays specifically. A lot of these processes analysis are broadly applicable, though, such as using keywords, finding databases that focus on your topic. And for example, like if a student wanted to write about climate change or animal conservation, they might use National Geographic as a good source for information and imagery. So you might be wondering, like, all of these lesson plans, but how do I even grade something that is purely visual? Because it is very different from assessing writing. So to that end, we have crafted some sample rubrics that show how you might approach this. So first we have a rubric for the visual essay itself, and this rubric will be applied to the visual essay that we made as a sample. So we have a couple categories that might be not so dissimilar from the traditional essay, like thesis and arguments, where you're assessing the student's ability to make an argument with the visual essay. And you could honestly apply these to a written essay as well, because it's like contains a thesis that is unclear, contains a thesis that is clear, focused, and interesting, contains arguments that are focused, clear, and well researched. These are not unique to the visual essay itself. What is unique is aspects such as design. Visual essay is cohesive, eye-catching. You might judge it based on the structure, the design choices that the student implemented, and like how much time and effort was demonstrated by the visual essay. There's things like focus. Images, text, and any additional elements should work together to support and enhance the message. So you might be judging it based on just how focused and precise this visual essay is and whether things feel out of place or not. And then we just have professionalism, where students' visual essays will meet all the formatting requirements, and you can set these numbers to whatever you'd like, but you might want to consider having a concrete requirement of like, this visual essay must have 12 images, or for every image you must have like this much text if you would like students to integrate text per image. And then also things like citations, whether things are clean, planned, well polished, and making sure that a modicum of effort was placed into the assignment. And as well as visual essays, you might want to consider having students discuss sort of their process and justify their decisions, which is where our written rubric comes in.
So we really like to add an idea because this is a very creative project. So having a way where students discuss their creative decisions helps us understand where the students were coming from, and also helps us understand what their project's trying to get across. Because with a more abstract visual essay, you may struggle to figure out what your student was getting across. So having a sort of cover letter, a written reflection on how they got through it will help immensely in that regard. So in the written essay rubric, you can do this as 20 points extra if they have it completed, or you can actually have a full-on rubric. It's just depending on what you specifically want to do as a teacher. For this purpose, we have one as a written portion as a rubric. So you can talk about analysis. So they're offering analysis of their own topic, which is deep and original, it's insightful and thought-provoking, and you can really tell that they had true meaning behind their visual essay. Then also the justification. As mentioned earlier, we talked about the logos, ethos, and pathos for the argument. This is something that you do need to get across to your students, that even though it's a visual essay, they still need these three aspects. And if they can defend their choices rooted in logos, ethos, and pathos, that will help you immensely understand where they came from. So going into comprehension, does it make sense? Does it demonstrate a nuanced understanding of the topic? Did they actually have a reason for the images they chose, or did they just choose a bunch of images because they look kind of like each other? Finally, we also have focus. Do the images actually support the thesis, or are they kind of loosely tied to it? And then finally, for mechanics, kind of your classic word count, citation style, all that fun stuff that we're so used to in written essays. So now we have discussed rubrics. We're going to talk a little bit about our sequencing step. Like any unit, we have many different sequencings that we have to go over. So uh, we have a whole resource in our packet with all 8 sequencing steps, but we're going to go over some of them slightly here.
So you can structure your visual essay unit however you might please. You might choose to get more into the actual writing aspect of it if your students are not as familiar with things like constructing theses, looking up research, or you might choose to get more in depth to the editing part. We tried to keep a sort of peaceful middle ground on that. So a couple of best practices that we tried to follow when creating these sequencing steps steps is to teach visual analysis where you would teach textual analysis, because this is kind of new territory for students, especially if you're teaching juniors and seniors. They may already be familiar with the process of writing an essay and analyzing text, but they might not be as familiar with certain design principles. They might not understand how images and audio can come together to create a message in the way that a piece of text might be able to. So, sort of focusing on those principles and those design choices, such as symmetry, contrast, composition, structure, and how those can contribute to a message, because that is very important to get across if students want to be able to tackle this assignment on their own. And then you should also involve careful planning in the form of, research, storyboarding, all those kinds of things, just to make sure that students are going into this assignment with a lot of different safety nets to sort of guide and direct their focus. And then you should also implement opportunities for students to practice the editing programs in class. You could have them practicing outside of class, but then you're never really sure if they're doing it. So giving them opportunities to sort of play with the editing programs, familiarize themselves with the features, and giving them time in class to work on their visual essay instead of leaving it to sort of an out of class, they'll bring it in on class on Monday, just to make sure that they are learning the processes. And then at the end of the unit, it's always good to sort of have students presenting their finished products and reflecting on the process together. This creates a sense of community among students and allows them to celebrate this enormous undertaking that they have just completed.
So to recap, now kind of understand visual essays and their purpose. We've gone over different teaching strategies, such as how to teach storyboarding, scripting, and editing. We have many different best practices for accessibility, pacing, engagement. And finally, this whole thing is about using multimodal analysis to enhance learning. And this ever-changing world of more technology, we need to implement different ways of engagement to help our students connect with material.
So to wrap this up, do you guys have any questions? Any questions about implementing visual essays into your own teaching, alternative tools or software you might want to use, or structuring assignments or assessment strategies?
And if you do have any questions, you can go ahead and fill out this exit ticket. It's just kind of a review of this all, and with the exit ticket, we're going to know who filled it out. So we'll be able to get back to you with any questions that you may have.
Thank you guys so much for watching. We hope that you've learned something.
And we hope that you're able to utilize visual essays in your own classroom very soon.